Hello. In part 2 began an exploration of medieval wall paintings in parish churches and looked at the range of subject matter covered by the paintings and ended by posing the question, who might have paid for them? Well, they might have been commissioned by wealthy local patrons, merchants or noble families, and sometimes to adorn private chapels and chantries. This scene of Christ surrounded by the instruments of the Passion is in the Chudley Chantry, St John's Church, Ashton in Devon. And the Chudleys were lords of the manor of Ashton for 500 years from around 1300. They might also be commissioned by local guilds, professional associations of merchants or craftsmen, and we also find bequests in wills. A William Waddill of Marston Mortain in Bedfordshire, who died in 1505, left 3 and 4pence for a doom painting in his local church. The donors' coats of arms are sometimes depicted. These heraldic shields are at All Saints' Church, Chalgrave in Bedfordshire, and they date to the 15th century. And occasionally we might find subscriptions raised by the local community, clubbing together to decorate the nave, the lay part of the church. And from the 13th century it was the parishioners who were responsible for the upkeep of the nave, and by extension its decoration. And in the nave, paintings tend to reflect the basic tenets of Christianity. And England is not unique for wall paintings. Churches throughout Western Europe have them. And Bishop Lucar of Tuy in Spain in 1230 said that wall paintings help the house of God elevate the mind to heavenly things. William of Malmesbury, writing around 1130, said that a church was not considered complete until its walls glistened with colour. Now, who were the artists? The paintings are never signed, so that doesn't make it easy. But almost certainly I think we're looking at a wide mix. There will be some professional artists, perhaps travelling journeymen. The basic quality of some church schemes suggests it was done by the locals, amateurs. Church Wardens records for St Margaret'S, the little church that stands in the shadow of Westminster Abbey and the Houses of Parliament, has a note, paid to John Reed, painter, for painting the wall behind St Margaret, 6pence. It rather sounds as though it's a single colour, perhaps to set off a statue. In the tax records for Winchester in 1285, we find Agnes the painter appearing, so we have some women involved. And the documents of St Stephen's Chapel, the old chapel of the Palace of Westminster, of which only the crypt survived the fire of 1834, they record Master Hugh of St Albans decorating the chapel in 1351, for which he was paid 1 shilling a day. His senior assistants, Richard of Norwich and John of Oxford, were paid 9pence a day. And of Norwich and of Oxford, a hint here that we might be having experience of travelling journeyman artists. And then there were junior assistants who might be doing jobs like priming the walls, earning between 4pence and 6pence per day. Now, this was good money for the time. That and the title of Master Hugh of St Albans suggests we have a team of professionals. And we know there were artist guilds in medieval London and in Chester, and it is quite likely that such guilds existed in the other major medieval cities, places like York and Norwich and Lincoln. And the best work is done by small teams of professionals working regionally. And similarities of style and of detail and of execution identify the work of one particular group. They are known as the Lewes Group, and they're active around the Sussex area between roughly 1100 and 1120. And what the Lewes Group are painting are true frescoes. The images are painted onto wet plaster. This is a rare technique in medieval parish churches, and quite clearly there was a common brush at work. And thinking about brushes, what would they have been made of? Animal hair. So perhaps squirrel for fine work, badger hair for covering large areas in a single colour. This is the Lewes Group at work at St Botolph's Church in Hardham in West Sussex. And among the individual scenes we have Adam and Eve in a temptation scene. And if you look closely at the style of this painting, it's almost as if they're trying to make it look like a wall hanging. We also have St George on Crusade, and this would have been painted within very few years of the first Crusade taking place. Lewes Group still at St John's Church, Clayton in West Sussex, a Christ in Majesty. This is Coombes Church, West Sussex, it's near Shoreham. St Peter receiving the keys of heaven. And these restored fragments are at St Michael's Church, Plumpton in East Sussex. Now, when did wall painting in English churches begin? Probably as soon as some of them began to be covered in smooth plaster. So during the 7th century, which gives us an unbroken history of wall painting through to the Reformation of over 800 years. That said, by the later 14th century, there is less wall space available. 1350 and afterwards, small windows give way to large perpendicular Gothic windows, more opportunities for stained glass than for wall painting. And the very earliest paintings don't survive beyond the faintest traces. They've either been destroyed, or they've faded, or they've been overpainted. And it's often assumed that they would have been very simple images, but there's no evidence of that. What does survive from that early medieval period are very sophisticated illuminated manuscripts, and I see no reason to suppose that images in churches might not have been stylistically similar. This scene above the chancel arch of St Andrew's Church and Nether Wallop in Hampshire is a rare example of an Anglo-Saxon wall painting surviving in situ. Dates to around about 1000. And this is very similar in style to the illuminated manuscripts that were being produced in the area at the same time by the so-called Winchester School, characterised by opulent colours, naturalistic figures and very fluttery drapery. Now next time I'm going to look at some of the earliest surviving wall paintings and talk about why the walls were painted, what was the purpose of these paintings, and what might we learn from them. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.